Ամենակարևորը քո առողջության մասին մտածելն է։
Մյուս անգամ ճանապարհից չհայտնվես։ Քեզ միտեղ կորցրու ու աչքից չերևաս։
Չեմ կարող շարժեմ, պապ։ Չեմ կարող քայլեմ։
Եթե սիրում ես, ուրեմն սпасել էլ կկարողանաս։
Համհավատա երկուսն էլ սարսափելի վիճակում են։ Ես Մանանին բացարձակ չեմ։
Որի խնդրում եմ, դու որի հետ կոպիտ ես, չէ՞ խոսում, ես օր ու գիշեր հանգիստս կոր։
Քիչ էր մնում աղջկան զորով պսակեր այդ արամի հետ ոնց տեն ստացվեց։
Չէ, այնքան էր խառնվել գործերը չեմ հասցրել։ Ինչ որ բան ա եղել։
Իմ ճանաչած Վովան հիմա իրան պատե-պատ էր խփել ու ասում էր, որ
Hunan is awake, fully conscious, and the very first thing out of his mouth is not relief. It's a promise of revenge. And Avo, the same man who prayed for his death only days ago, is standing in that very room pretending nothing ever happened. Before we get into it, tell me where you're watching from tonight. Drop your city in the comments. I read every single one myself, and I genuinely love seeing how far this story is reaching. So let's see it tonight. Let's rebuild exactly where we are, because this last episode dropped bombshells in almost every single scene, and none of them are going to stay quiet for long. Hunan came back from that coma sharper and more dangerous than before, immediately demanding to know who is behind the attempt on his life. And in a chilling exchange with Avo, he made it brutally clear that Arno is already in custody, already being questioned about the hit and run, and that whoever ordered the hit on him is going to be found no matter how long it takes. Watch how fast this hunt accelerates in the coming episode, because a man like Hunan does not simply threaten and wait, he moves. And everyone in that family who has been hiding something is about to feel the walls closing in. Now here's where things get genuinely dangerous, because Avo's exchange with Hunan revealed something explosive hiding in plain sight. When Hunan accused him directly, asking whether Avo had anything to do with the assassination attempt, Avo deflected with that same nervous, evasive energy he's shown all season, and Hunan didn't buy it for a second. Watch this thread closely in the coming episode, because Hunan is not going to let this go. And if Avo's obsession with Olga somehow connects to money, to debts, to desperation strong enough to make a man consider unthinkable choices, that connection is going to surface violently once Hunan starts digging, with the same ruthless efficiency he's used to build his entire empire. Meanwhile, Avo's affair with Olga, Vova's own mother, has stopped being a background embarrassment and become a full-blown family crisis. Vova already caught them together outside her home, already dragged Avo out of a room once, and in this last episode we watched Avo escalate his obsession even further, sneaking to her house at night, declaring love in the most delusional, inappropriate way possible, insisting that age means nothing when it comes to real feeling. In the coming episode, expect this to explode completely into the open. Manann already caught them together in public and confronted her own father about it directly, disgusted and humiliated. And that confrontation is not going to stay contained to one conversation. Expect the whole family, including Hunan himself now that he's conscious and paying attention to everything again, to learn the full extent of what Avo has been doing. And expect consequences far more severe than another shouting match. Now let's talk about Manann, because her arc in this last episode delivered one of the most devastating reveals of the entire story. She's pregnant. The baby survived everything we thought was lost, and the sex of the child was just confirmed, a boy. This changes everything about the emotional stakes going forward. Remember, Manann has been carrying enormous guilt over believing she lost this pregnancy, has been accused cruelly by Grisho of ending it deliberately, has been humiliated publicly by Masha claiming her own pregnancy with Grisho's child. In the coming episode, expect Manann to use this confirmation as a turning point, a moment where she finally starts reclaiming her power in this family instead of absorbing everyone else's chaos silently. Watch how she handles the moment Masha finds out the truth, because that confrontation is coming, and Manann is not going to back down from it the way she did in earlier episodes. Speaking of Masha, her scene with Ina in this last episode was one of the coldest, most calculated moves she's made yet. She showed up specifically to inform the family that she and Grisho are having a boy, framing it almost like a business announcement, watching for the reaction, clearly trying to establish herself as a legitimate rival to Manann's place in this family. Ina's response, that this is not a sacrifice worth making given everything the family is going through, was a masterclass in polite rejection. But Masha is not the kind of woman who accepts rejection quietly. In the coming episode, expect her to escalate her presence even further, especially when she learns that Manann's baby is also a boy, because that detail is going to feel like a direct challenge to the position she's been trying to claim. And watch for her competitive instincts to turn dangerous rather than simply annoying. Now here's where the investigation truly tightens. Arno being arrested and confirmed to be under interrogation connects directly back to everything we've suspected about who ran Makoon's down and who orchestrated the attempt on Hunan's life. In this last episode, Hunan directly accused Avo of possibly being involved, referencing money, referencing motive, and Avo's panicked, unconvincing denials only made him look guiltier. In the coming episode, expect Hunan to pull every string he has to get answers out of Arno directly, and expect whatever Arno reveals to implicate people much closer to this family than anyone wants to admit. Remember, Aram's frantic attempt to rush Vova out of the country happened at the exact moment this investigation was closing in, and that thread has never actually been resolved. Watch for Aram's name to resurface hard in the coming episode, because a father that desperate to protect his son does not stay hidden from scrutiny forever. David and Nere's storyline is quietly becoming one of the most financially tense threads in this entire story. Nere's comment about her savings being enough to help cover the loan repayment and David's immediate refusal, insisting the financial responsibility is his alone, is not simply a sweet moment of pride, it's a warning sign. This business is clearly struggling under pressure it cannot sustain much longer, especially with the entire family's resources being pulled toward Hunan's recovery, Grisho's treatment, and now the fallout from Arno's arrest. In the coming episode, expect David's stubborn refusal to accept help to push this couple toward a breaking point, because a business drowning in debt does not fix itself through pride alone, and Nere is not going to sit quietly forever watching him struggle without her. Now, let's focus on the moment that changes everything about how we understand Avo, the grandfather. His conversation with Hunan in that hospital room, joking about the afterlife, joking that even the devil didn't want him, was classic dark comedy on the surface, but underneath it revealed something sharper. Something almost like affection buried under decades of resentment. Watch this relationship evolve in the coming episode, because a man who spent this entire story bitter, dismissive, endlessly critical of Hunan just showed a flicker of genuine relief that his son survived. And that crack in his hardened exterior is going to matter more than it seems right now, especially once the family starts unraveling who was actually behind the assassination attempt. Here's where everything converges into the twist worth preparing yourself for. Hunan already suspects Avo directly, already connected the dots between motive, desperation, and opportunity. But think about what we actually know. Avo has been circling this family with uncomfortable, obsessive intensity for weeks, inserting himself into private moments, refusing every warning to stay away, behaving with a duplicity that goes far beyond simple romantic foolishness. What if Avo's obsession with Olga was never really about love at all? What if it was cover? A distraction elaborate enough to keep the family's attention away from what he was actually doing behind the scenes. A man desperate enough to declare love to his own nephew's mother in the middle of the night, willing to humiliate himself completely in front of the entire family, might also be desperate enough to be hiding something far more dangerous underneath that performance. And just as Hunan starts closing in on the truth, just as Arno sits in that interrogation room deciding whether to give up the name of whoever really ordered the hit, Manann is going to receive a call from a hospital in Germany, informing her that Grisho has checked himself out against every medical order, boarding a flight back to Armenia without telling anyone, and that he is coming home not for his family, not for his recovery, but because he has just learned something about his own father's condition that no one in this family was ever supposed to find out. What Grisho learned is not about Hunan's medical condition at all. It's about the identity of the man Hunan has been hunting. And the second that name reached him through a leaked hospital record, he understood something his own mother has spent years hiding, that the person behind everything is not a stranger circling this family from the outside. It's someone who has been sitting at their dinner table the entire time. Quick thing before we continue, drop your city in the comments if you haven't yet. I read every single one tonight. Let's see how far this reaches.
Grisho lands in Armenia paralyzed, exhausted, ignoring every doctor's warning about the risk of that flight. And instead of going straight to Manann, instead of going to see his newborn son's ultrasound results or checking on his own recovery, he goes directly to the hospital where Avo has been quietly stationed near Hunan this entire time. Watch this confrontation carefully in the coming episode, because Grisho is not walking in there confused. He's walking in there with a piece of information that changes the entire balance of power in this family. And the first person he's going to test that information against is the one man who has never fully explained why he's been circling this family with such uncomfortable persistence. Meanwhile, Arno finally breaks in that interrogation room, and the name he gives investigators is not going to be Avo's name at all, not directly. It's going to be a name connected to Erna's uncle, the same man Erna referenced almost carelessly weeks ago, the same man whose loyalty to this family has always felt just slightly too convenient. Watch how quickly Hunan moves once that name surfaces, because a man who has spent his entire life building an empire on control does not wait patiently for police procedure. He's going to use every resource he has to get to that man himself, and expect that hunt to collide violently with whatever Grisho is already uncovering back at the hospital. And here is the twist that ties every thread in this story together at once. What if Avo's obsession with Olga and Erna's uncle, and the man who called Ina 15 years after Raphael's death, and the young man who walked into that hospital claiming to be Raphael's son, are not separate mysteries at all? What if they are all connected through one buried truth this family has never fully faced? That Raphael's death was never simply a tragedy Hunan failed to prevent. It was the beginning of a plan someone has been executing patiently for 15 years, waiting for the exact moment this family would be weak enough, distracted enough, grieving enough to finally strike at its very center. And just as Grisho corners Avo in that hospital hallway, demanding answers about a name he's not even supposed to know, Ina's phone rings one more time. And this time the voice on the other end doesn't ask for her, it asks for Grisho directly, and tells him that if he wants to know the full truth about his brother Raphael, he needs to come alone, tonight, to the one place this family swore they would never return to again. That place is the old family estate outside the city, the house Hunan sealed off and abandoned the year Raphael died. The one property nobody in this family has set foot in for 15 years. And the fact that someone is waiting for Grisho there right now means whoever orchestrated everything has been watching this family far more closely than anyone realized. Before we go further, drop your city in the comments if you haven't yet tonight. I read every single one. Let's see how far this episode travels.
Grisho, still barely able to stand, still recovering from a flight his doctors begged him not to take, is going to make the reckless decision to go there completely alone, telling no one, not Manann, not his mother, not even Leo, because some instinct tells him that if this family finds out where he's going, someone is going to try to stop him before he gets the answers he spent his entire recovery desperate for. Watch how dangerous this choice is, because a man who nearly died once already this season is now walking directly into a situation nobody around him has any way to protect him from. Meanwhile, back at the hospital, Avo is not going to stay quiet about being cornered by Grisho. Expect him to immediately reach out to someone, a phone call made in a rushed, panicked whisper the moment Grisho walks away, and that call is going to reveal exactly how deep Avo's involvement actually runs. He's not simply a foolish old man chasing an inappropriate romance. He's someone who has known pieces of this truth for years and has been terrified the entire time that Hunan would eventually find out he knew. And here's where the story reaches its most devastating turn yet. When Grisho arrives at that abandoned estate, the person waiting for him is not a stranger, and it's not the young man who claimed to be Raphael's son either. It's Ashken, standing in the doorway of a house she hasn't entered in 15 years. And what she tells Grisho in that moment is going to shatter every version of her brother's death this family has ever believed. Because Raphael did not simply die that night the way everyone has always been told. And the reason his body was never properly identified by anyone outside Hunan's closest circle is about to make horrifying sense. And just as Ashken opens her mouth to finally say the words this family has been running from for 15 years, headlights sweep across the driveway behind Grisho, and standing there, stepping out of the car, is Hunan himself, having somehow discovered exactly where his son went. And the look on his face makes it painfully clear that he already knows exactly what Ashken is about to say. Hunan's face isn't shock, it's dread. The look of a man who has spent 15 years praying this exact moment would never come. And the second his eyes meet Ashken's, Grisho understands something devastating. His father already knew she was alive this entire time. Quick thing before we continue, drop your city in the comments if you haven't yet. I read every single one tonight. Let's see how far this reaches. Watch Hunan in this scene, because the man who just woke from a coma promising ruthless revenge on whoever tried to kill him is now standing frozen in his own driveway, unable to move, unable to speak, staring at a woman he clearly buried in his mind 15 years ago, even though her body never actually went into the ground. Grisho, exhausted, paralyzed, running on nothing but desperation to understand his brother's death, is going to look between the two of them and realize the truth is not simply that Ashken survived, it's that his father helped her disappear. Ashken isn't going to soften this for anyone in that driveway. She's going to tell Grisho directly that Raphael did not die in the accident this family has told itself for 15 years, that what actually happened that night involved a decision Hunan made to protect the business, the family name, everything he'd built, and that Ashken was the only person who ever knew the full truth because she was the one standing there when it happened. Watch Hunan's reaction carefully here, because for the first time in this entire story, the most powerful man in this family is not in control of the room. He's a man about to be exposed in front of his own son. And just as Ashken turns to explain exactly what Hunan did that night, exactly why Raphael's death was never the simple accident everyone believed, the front door of that abandoned house creaks open behind her, and a third figure steps out into the headlights. Someone none of them expected to be inside that house at all. Someone Hunan hasn't seen in 15 years and never once imagined would be standing there waiting. The figure stepping into the light is Raphael himself, alive, older, quieter, standing in the doorway of the house his own family sealed shut 15 years ago. And the first thing he says is not to Hunan, it's to Grisho, calling him by the childhood nickname only a brother would remember. Quick thing before we continue, drop your city in the comments if you haven't yet. Let's see how far this reaches tonight. Watch Grisho collapse against the car in this moment, because paralyzed, exhausted, already stretched past his limit tonight, he is now staring at a brother he has spent 15 years mourning, a brother who apparently chose, or was forced, to let his entire family believe he was dead. Hunan doesn't move, doesn't speak. The fury that's defined him this entire season completely gone, replaced by something none of his children have ever seen on his face before, genuine fear of his own son. Raphael's voice is steady when he finally turns to Hunan, and what he says is not an accusation, it's worse. It's quiet, controlled disappointment, the kind that cuts deeper than any threat Hunan has ever made to anyone else. He tells Hunan he stayed away for 15 years, not because he couldn't come home, but because Hunan asked him to disappear, paid him to disappear, chose the family's reputation over his own son's life the night everything went wrong.